Major warning, before we begin this video, heads up, there are a lot of spoilers for Avengers Infinity War in this list. You've been warned. Loki has been hailed as one of the best villains to ever appear in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. His character development over the course of the last several years has compelled and astounded fans of the franchise, and it's not hard to sympathize with Thor's adoptive brother, regardless of how sinister he can be. Now, during Avengers Infinity War, right off the bat, Thanos kills Loki, who tries to save his brother and deceive Thanos, but fails to do so, minus the saving Thor part, which results in his death. Because of the circumstances of his death and the deceptive nature of the character in general, this has led many fans to theorize how Loki will come into play in the grander scheme of things, and what role he'll play in taking Thanos down, or working with him. So today we're diving into some of those hypotheticals with our list of the top 10 Loki fan theories that will make you question everything. Or at least some things. A solid amount of things in questioning and pondering, that's for sure. Starting us off in at number 10, True Hero. This theory speculates that Loki has actually been a hero all along, and that his actions during the first Thor film and the first Avengers film were all done out of good. So let's start by looking at Thor. The theory outlines how in the first Thor film everything that Loki did was intentionally for the good of Asgard, knowing Thor was not ready to lead. And not because he just wanted to prove his worth and that he wanted the throne, but actually that he wanted everyone to perceive his actions that way in order to get the necessary results. This spawns from his dialogue with Odin, where he tells his adoptive father that his actions were, I quote, for all of us. At the end of the film, he's dangling over a portal and lets himself fall in, ensuring that all of the work that he's done is solidified. That's when he learns of the Mad Titan's grander scheme, Thanos' goal of getting the Infinity Stones, and decides to take the responsibility to prevent it by volunteering to attack Earth. This is a move he knows will fail because of the Avengers, and that it will ultimately dismantle Thanos' Chitauri army. Up next, number 9, HeIntentional Lost. This theory plays off the idea that Loki has been manipulating the events of the MCU, specifically the events of the first Avengers film. We saw how cunning he was when he intentionally got himself captured midway through the movie. So this theory suggests that the attack on New York was all part of a bigger plan to get him to return to Asgard with the Tesseract. This works, and he ends up in a prison cell in Thor: The Dark World, only to eventually be released and to help Thor out, gaining his trust, faking his death, and then disguising himself as Odin, which gets him exactly what he originally wanted in the first Thor movie. Although that doesn't last long though, does it? I mean, it lasts 4 years, but... And at number 8, everything is his fault. Loki is pretty much the reason why Thanos has been successful, and why a lot of other bad stuff has happened in the MCU. So let's break that down. In the first Avengers movie, Loki loses the Tesseract and the Scepter. The Scepter is then used by Hydra to conduct a bunch of experiments which results in the abilities of the Maximoff twins. It also results in the creation of Ultron. Wanda gives Tony that vision which leads to his obsession with creating Ultron, which then leads to the creation of Vision, who is then walking around with the Mind Stone on his forehead right out in the open. Totally safe. This leads to the Battle of Sokovia, which then leads to the Accords, which then leads to the divide between the Avengers. But let's jump back to Thor: The Dark World for a sec. Loki becomes Odin and reigns over Asgard for the next 4 years, and then makes some serious muck-ups, not saving Eotri when Thanos attacks, leading to the creation of the Gauntlet. He also replaces Heimdall, which then prevents the MCU heroes from having further insight of what other horrible things Thanos was stirring up in the galaxy, which is why they have next to no warning about Thanos coming to Earth, lessening their chances of actually being successful in the battle against him. Loki is the one who gives the Collector an Infinity Stone, and that one Thanos snatches up real easy in Infinity War. But let's back this up to Ragnarok. Loki saves the Tesseract, bringing it with him on the Asgardian ship rather than destroying it, which pretty much just puts it in the hands of Thanos and also causes his and Heimdall's deaths, and then allows for Thanos to succeed in Infinity War. So kinda all your fault. And at number 7, Loki won't come back. One of the more unfortunate theories circulating the interwebs is that Loki is one of the only characters who died in Infinity War that won't come back. The reasoning behind this is twofold. One, his sacrifice meant something and was too important to be reversed. He's the reason why Thor is still alive. Second, he died prior to Thanos wiping people out with the Infinity Gauntlet, and therefore he won't be revived since he was killed by a different, more physical means. Running with that latter reason, there's a whole Pandora's box of intricacies that may be used to justify why exactly he won't be allowed to return, along the lines of how the Infinity Stones kill someone versus, straight up physical murder. But the former reason seems like it could play more crucially into the plot when it comes to not altering the timeline of the MCU too much, if we're running with that whole time travel will be used to reverse things theory. This could also mean that both Heimdall and Vision won't be able to return either, having made similar sacrifices. Heimdall saved the Hulk, sending him to Earth in order to warn the Avengers, and Vision was killed in an attempt to destroy the Mind Stone to prevent Thanos from getting a complete set of stones, becoming omnipotent, even though that didn't end up working. Oh well. In at number 6, Loki's sexuality. Moving away from the seriousness of the fate of the MCU, this theory dives into Loki's sexuality, and what floats his boat. While it's canon in the comics that Loki is pansexual and gender fluid, the MCU films have yet to give us any insight on what makes Loki all tingly inside, even though you bet your butt that all those Thorky shippers think that it's his big, handsome, and totally not biologically related to him brother. Yeah, we've done a couple of lists on Avengers ships. Y'all should probably check it out. Anywho, fans have speculated that now that the MCU has finally introduced a queer character to the mix, in the form of Tessa Thompson's Valkyrie, Loki may also come out of the closet, if he makes it out of Avengers 4 alive, that is. In at number 5, Thanos and Loki are in cahoots. Riffing off that theory we discussed earlier about everything Loki has done is how Thanos was able to succeed, this one suggests that rather than Loki being a pawn, he and Thanos were in cahoots together, and he's actually working with him with the promise of getting Asgard once he's helped Thanos complete his task, which was the original deal that he made when he was given the scepter to begin with, along with dominion over Earth. In order to keep up this charade, he and Thanos staged his death in Infinity War, which is why Thor was kept alive after Thanos had killed Loki. Why else wouldn't he take out the Asgardian then and there, rather than leaving him alive and potentially creating a threat for himself later on down the road? And at number 4, Loki survives. If you think the God of Mischief has really turned a leaf and is an anti-hero on the side of good rather than working for Thanos, or his own agenda, perhaps this theory will tickle your fancy better than the last one. Loki's attempt to deceive Thanos is arguably not his best trick, so much so that many think it was deliberately bad. This is because it was all a ploy for Loki to get out of there while faking his own death. One theory by Reddit user Steampunk Penguin points out that he had a tiny window of opportunity to use the Tesseract to get out of there without being noticed. When he offers it to Thanos, the Hulk then tackles Thanos, and the two begin to fight, and then Loki drops the Tesseract to the ground. He could have teleported out of there in that second, and used a duplicate of himself to fake his own death, like he did during Thor: The Dark World. They go on to speculate that Loki's last words are a hint to Thor. He says, "I assure you, brother, the sun will shine on us again," which this theory speculates is a veiled message to Thor that he's actually going to be on Earth, because the sun shining down on them. You get it. And at number 3, Thor will have to sacrifice Loki. One of the biggest theories about the upcoming Avengers 4 film is that time travel will be essential to revising what Thanos had done to the universe. We've already seen photos leaked from the set, and in those photos we can see Loki, locked up in chains, right after the Battle of New York. While many people have assumed that this is because the Battle of New York is important to the narrative, 2 Infinity Stones were involved, one theory speculates that the return to this moment in the timeline is because of Loki, rather than the Avengers needing to destroy one or both of the stones that were present. Riffing off of the everything is Loki's fault theory, perhaps the Avengers realize that the key to fixing the timeline so that Thanos doesn't get his hands on all of the Infinity Stones is to kill Loki. And who better to do this than Thor, his brother, who at that point still thinks that Loki is the worst thing to ever happen, and likely the only one with the power to actually kill him. Perhaps Thor of the present timeline, along with the other Avengers, will have to manipulate circumstances, leaving them with no choice but to kill Loki rather than to return him to Asgard and put him in prison. And at number 2, Bruce Banner is Loki. This is a bit of a strange one, but let's just run with it. This one suggests that Loki has been undercover as Bruce Banner. As journalist Josh Dickey describes on Twitter, I quote, "Loki's dagger sneak attack on Thanos was feeble. He knew it wouldn't work. Heimdall also knows that Banner can probably survive anything Thanos throws at him in the short term. On Earth, Banner is acting loopy, can't Hulk out. Deception more useful now than force. Banner is Loki." Despite it being pointed out that Banner inside the Hulkbuster suit tried to Hulk out but couldn't, the way that this theory could work is that perhaps Loki has possessed Banner, somehow using a new trick inspired by what he was capable of doing with the Mind Stone when it was in the scepter. And finally, in at number 1, Loki has played Thanos. One theory speculates that Loki has been playing Thanos all along. This theory outlines how Loki has been playing the long game, and how he knew about Thanos right from the get-go, and has manipulated all of the events that has occurred in the MCU after the first Thor movie onwards. This theory speculates that he became aware of Thanos' plan after he fell through that portal at the end of the first Thor movie, and decided to take advantage of the situation by letting Thanos collect all of the gems for him. He's then given the scepter, uses it to dismantle Thanos' Chitauri army in the Avengers film by bringing them to Earth so that the Avengers will defeat them all while keeping the Tesseract away from Thanos in the meantime. He's the one who then sends Sif and Volstagg to deliver the other Infinity Stone to the Collector for safekeeping, all while he's disguised as Odin at the end of Thor: The Dark World, which, as we mentioned, caused a lot of trouble. This spreads out the stones, which will later force Thanos into collecting them within a tighter amount of time, therefore becoming preoccupied with the rallying opposition of the heroes and whatnot. It also ensures that the heroes will come into direct conflict with the Mad Titan, and will continue to distract them with their efforts to defeat him later on. Loki's actions as Odin ensures that Thanos can get to Eotri undetected, causing a mold of the gauntlet to be made, which will also allow Loki in the future to have a new one made for him after Thanos' snap pretty much destroyed the previous gauntlet. By the time Infinity War rolls around, Loki has positioned himself to take on Thanos when the Mad Titan ahead and attacks the Asgardian ship, since he made sure the Tesseract wasn't destroyed in Ragnarok, and he seemingly gets himself killed in order to operate secretly and set the next stage of his plan in motion while everyone assumes that he's dead. When Loki returns with Thanos thinking that he's dead, he'll have the opportunity to go after the Infinity Gauntlet himself, while the remaining Avengers struggle to take him on. And just like in the Infinity Gauntlet comic, Thanos will be distracted, giving Loki the opportunity to make a move and get the Infinity Gauntlet, or just the stones, for himself, instead of it being Nebula like it was in the comics. Now to further this theory, photos have been leaked from the set of Avengers 4, like we've mentioned like a million times in this video so far, showing Loki in chains right after the Battle of New York. Could this shine more light on Loki's master plan and what else he's been manipulating behind the scenes? Essentially, this theory is a beast. But to sum it up, everything Loki has done in the MCU up until now has been a master plan to manipulate Thanos so that at the right time he'll take the Infinity Stones for himself, get a new gauntlet made thanks to his brother Thor being still alive and visiting Eotri that is, and then assume his role as the ruler of the universe. It's a pretty sophisticated plan. And if it's true... Alright, there we have it, friends. That was a beast of a list, wasn't it? So what do you guys all think? Will Loki return for good in the Avengers 4? Will he get a better ending than he did in Infinity War if he's meant to die? And how do you think his story will pan out in the Battle of New York scenes? Let us know all of your thoughts and feels in those comments below. Now if you dug this video, make sure you take the time to hit those like and subscribe buttons if you haven't already. And be sure to take a look at the playlist on your screen right now for more nerdy vids. In the meantime, thanks for watching everyone. I'll catch you all in the next video.